Cole Cubelic and his happy wife delivered Locke Cubelic into the world earlier this week, who I understand has already picked up an SEC offer from Ed Ogeron and the LSU Tigers. Loves the way that he's got good feet, from what Ogeron says early on. Likes the feedback that he's seen there. Good picture taker as well. Cole, congratulations to you and the wife and to your growing family. How are you? Good morning.
Thank you, guys. I'm doing well. I appreciate you guys having me. A little bit tired.
I was to say you sound
yeah,
underslept.
We're excited about it.
Sound underslept. A great
And
shot.
on top of that, that draft only takes like 7 hours last night. So
Well, and that's what I was going to tell you. I saw the shot of you and Locke watching the draft in front of the computer. I thought that was a great early shot for the young son and father there. Watching the NFL draft. After round one, obviously in this part of the world in South Louisiana, we reacted to 5 LSU Tigers coming off the board, but 15 of those first 32 selections coming out of the SEC. What was your reaction from last night?
Complete dominance from the league, honestly. I mean, and how about the SEC West just in general, with Auburn having 2 players coming off the board, obviously LSU with 5, Alabama with 4. Just really a banner day for the SEC, shattering the record of 12 players from one conference that had been done a couple of times. 3 other times it had been done twice by the SEC. The ACC did it in 2006. But yeah, we kind of expected it. Jacob and I had kicked around Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Could he be that back that sort of snuck into the first round? His versatility, I think, is going to be something that the team absolutely loves. But I think most of the guys that you look at are going to be in good situations as well. I mean, Miami needs a franchise quarterback. They might have that in Tua. We know what Joe Burrow is going to mean to Cincinnati. We know what he's going to mean to that area. I think the Giants actually made the right pick with Andrew Thomas. I think he's the most ready left tackle in this draft that still has some upside. I think Matt Rule made the right pick in Carolina. I think people thought that was down to Derek Brown or Isaiah Simmons. I've seen a lot of Panther fans disappointed they wanted Isaiah Simmons, but you're getting a guy. I mean, let's think about it this way. Joe Brady went to Matt Rule and said that was the most difficult individual player that we had to game plan for last season. Think about the teams that LSU played last year. One of them, by the way, had Isaiah Simmons on that roster. So I think when you look at that, you say that's the guy that we're going to build our defense around. Obviously, Luke Kuechly's out, Cam Newton's out. They're starting over. You start inside with someone who can disrupt, give you one-on-one pass rush, can play the run, can take on blocks. He'll be able to do a lot of different things. I think Jerry Jeudy to Denver is a really good pick. Drew Lock, obviously, is the quarterback there and going to try to take over. I think he'll have a chance to be a playmaker in that scheme. I think Kinlaw to San Francisco is interesting. I love Javon Kinlaw, but obviously that's a good defensive line. You lose one of your best defensive linemen in the trade to the Colts, and then you just re-up with the second best interior defensive lineman available in this draft. So I think top to bottom, when you look at fit, you look at where guys are going to be. I mean, I think Jacksonville for Caleb is a good fit. That's sort of a hybrid scheme that asks their defenders to do a lot of different things. They've overhauled the personnel a little bit in the last 2 years, but you put him opposite Josh Allen, and all of a sudden now you've got 2 quick twitch guys with pass rush ability. Caleb obviously a little bit more depth, dropping back in coverage, but I thought most of the SEC guys that were taken step into really good situations as well.
Cole, we've talked so much about SEC guys over the last 3 weeks on our SEC preview show, so we've talked about all the names. Give me the biggest surprise that maybe got taken or didn't get taken in the first round out of the guys that we covered.
Oh, I don't know if there's a huge surprise that was taken in the first round. I think the biggest surprise for me was probably Patrick Queen not being taken by New Orleans at 24. I just felt like that was a good fit. I felt like that was a need. I felt like, obviously, geographically it made sense. New Orleans, I think, is trying to move on from a certain interior offensive lineman, but with Eric McCoy coming in last year, they sort of shore that up. Maybe DeAndre Swift. I mean, Noah Igbinoghene is a guy that people are going to look at and say, well, he had 1 pick at Auburn. You know, how can he be a guy that moves into the first round? But he is just an athletic freak show, and he hasn't been a DB for a really long time. Kevin Steele convinced him to move over. When he did, he showed some flashes. And I think he's a guy that some people will be surprised about, but he was the other Auburn guy that if they were going to get 2 in the first round, I figured it was going to be him, not Marlon Davidson. Xavier McKinney would be the one guy for me that I'm surprised didn't come off the board. I thought I think he's a perfect fit for where the NFL is headed. I think he can play man in the slot. I think he can come up and play the run. He can blitz. He can bring pressure. I think he's someone who can be exactly what a lot of NFL teams are going to need on a regular basis based on the offensive schemes that they're seeing. And he has that ultimate stamp of approval from Nick Saban. That's not just having played for Nick Saban, but there's been 4 or 5 guys during Saban's tenure at Alabama that certain individuals just get a different stamp of approval. Landon Collins was one of those guys. Mika Fitzpatrick was one of those guys. Rolando McClain was one of those guys. As a player, Xavier McKinney gets that stamp of approval. One of Nick Saban's favorite guys that he's ever had. And I was a little bit surprised based on the number of DBs that went, especially really not any safeties coming off the board. Xavier McKinney did not.
We are incredibly biased when we talk about LSU. That's why we appreciate your interaction and your input here. Were you surprised to see 6 cornerbacks come off the board before Fulton?
No, not really.
Okay.
And, I think when I talked to Dave about that a little bit during the season, there was a time last year where he went to be the full-time nickel in that LSU scheme. And so I wonder if some people just didn't get enough look at him where they want him and feel like where they're going to need him. I think he brings value to an NFL team. I think he's going to be an NFL starter, but I wonder if teams look at him as maybe, an outside corner that's going to be a long-time starter exactly where they need him. You're going to need DBs in this league. We know that. It's going to have to happen. There were a couple head scratchers. I didn't expect Jeff Gladney to be off the board. I don't think Jeff Gladney's a guy that plays very well in man coverage. I think Christian Fulton can play well in man coverage. So that one surprised me. But I think you have, you say you're biased from an LSU perspective. We're probably all biased from an SEC perspective. And when I look at some of the guys that are left on this board from the cornerback position, and I see Trayvon Diggs, I see Christian Fulton, I see Cam Dantzler out of Mississippi State, Javaris Davis out of Auburn. I know there are some really good SEC corners that are left. And without the injury, Bryce Hall out of Virginia probably comes off the board in the first round. So there's going to be some really good corners left. There's some really good running backs left. There's some really good players that are going to be coming off the board. Actually, I don't know if you guys knew this or not. From last year, more players played more snaps from off the board in round 2 than they did in round 1.
Wow.
In their first season in the NFL. So if you don't think this round's important, then just go back to a year ago.
Cole, the Saints take Cesar Ruiz from Michigan, center, possibly move him to guard, or McCoy, who they drafted last year, possibly he moves to guard. What do you think about the pick? And I want to ask you, you played center at a high level at Auburn. What is it like to move from center to guard, and what do you think about the pick overall?
Well, a lot of guys would tell you it's a relief. A lot of guys will tell you that they love it because you don't worry about snaps. You don't worry about having to call the plays. You don't have to worry about identifying the Mike linebacker, setting the protection, setting the run blocking schemes. So it's mentally it's easier. It's less on you. Now I think it takes a little bit more power, strength to be able to play guard. You're going to be manned up a little bit more. Cesar Ruiz has a low center of gravity. He understands leverage. He's got good push, good ability to move people. I think the Saints are probably looking towards moving on from Larry Warford at some point in time. And I think they love Eric McCoy. I mean, you talk about a value pick. That guy went in there and played great football for the Saints last year. He can play center or guard. Ruiz can play center or guard. I was surprised at the pick of where they made it because I didn't think you had to make it right there. But it's one that I guess that they liked. He was high on their board. Again, I thought that was a perfect fit for Patrick Queen. We didn't see him come off. But, Ruiz is great. I'm a little concerned with him in pass pro. And obviously in that scheme, they're going to be throwing the ball a lot, even though they get it out quick. But it's one that the Saints, I guess, liked a little bit better than I did.
That was going to be one of my questions is when you're a center, you're protected more in pass pro. You have guards on both sides of you that are kind of working with you, and also the pulling aspect of it. When you're a center, obviously you don't pull much. When you're a guard, you're running power, you're running counter, and doing some different things. You're going to be a puller, and you have to have a feel for that. You have to be able to read a defense. And is that something that can just come? Is that a transition that's difficult?
I think you have an understanding of it because even if you play guard, you still hear everybody do it. You still hear what it sounds like. 1998, we went through 6 centers, and Colin Sears was moving down to center. Mike Basile was moving down to center. You have an idea what it's going to be like because obviously that center is giving you the calls and they're distributing things to you, so you sort of understand it and you get it a little bit. But it's just not something that a lot of guys enjoy. I don't know if it's a task or a chore that a lot of people sort of welcome because they don't want that on them. They don't want when the left tackle misses an assignment and he's able to look down there and say, I didn't get the call. You know, they don't want that on them. So it's definitely something that requires a little bit more leadership, and I think a little bit more of the ability to say, you know, take a little bit more responsibility and say that was on me, because there's going to be guys that don't get things or miss things, and it's going to be easy for the coach to look at you and say, why didn't he get it? What happened? Why didn't we do that? Because ultimately it does come down to the center. It's on you to make those calls and to get those checks in.
Cole, I got 90 seconds. You were in Baton Rouge covering the Jordan Love game versus Utah State. What do you think about him going in the first round to the Packers?
I mean, I don't care about Jordan Love going in the first round because the ability is there. I'd be terrified of the turnovers, number one, but you got to look towards the future. But you have one of the greatest quarterbacks in our lifetimes and an opportunity to go compete for a playoff spot. You got some serious questions right now in Detroit with what's going to happen with Matthew Stafford. You have some serious questions in Chicago with what's going on with their quarterback situation. Now, Minnesota, I think, is in great shape, but you got a chance to go win that division, and that puts you in a great spot in the playoffs. And we all know you get in the playoffs, you go win 2-3 games, you get hot, all of a sudden things are different. Green Bay is in that position right now. You could have added a weapon on offense or added somebody on defense that's going to help you catch an extra game or two and maybe be a more dangerous team come playoff time. I don't understand this. I don't like this. Aaron Rodgers got 2-3 good years of football left in him, and I think has a chance to go make a real playoff push. And all of a sudden now you turn the page and begin to look to the future, and we know that he's a little bit irritable. So now you got a pissed off Aaron Rodgers on your hands as well. And I don't see that turning out to be one of the best moves that Green Bay's made in a long time.
After the news out of the LSU football facility earlier this week of the offer being extended to young Locke, it was good to see him nestled up against some purple and gold last night on his dad's chest, watching the NFL draft. Glad to see the parents are already on board. Good luck to good luck.
We got two of them with LSU. We're trying to be like the Hester family.
There we go, baby.
You got a lot of work to do. Thank you, Cole. See you, man.
Thanks, guys.